Welcome to the Hot Shop. My name is Davin and I am a glass blower. I'm also an educator. I've been teaching glass now around the United States for about 20 years, and more recently through social media, Instagram, YouTube, etc. around the world. I'm going to start a new series of videos on this channel that are going to be long form, close-up, nitty-gritty videos that follow a process from beginning to end that will, I hope, add to the library of information that's out there on glass blowing. A lot of the videos that I see, which I love, are more about the spirit of glass blowing. They're highly edited, often set to music, creative camera angles, etc., etc. But you don't really understand why the artist is doing what they're doing unless you already know the material and you already know how to do that particular thing. If you just want to watch something and be entertained, watch the video without commentary. But if you're an aspiring glass blower and you want to maybe level up your game or understand why certain things are happening in your practice or understand why certain things are working or are not working, then I hope that these will be the videos for you. Watch the ones with commentary. I'm going to narrate over the original video and break down why I'm doing what I'm doing and what is happening with each step, so that maybe that can act as an educational tool for those many aspiring glass blowers around the world. Please like and subscribe. I'm going to try to put out as many of these in 2023 as I can. Let me know in the comments things that you would like to see made and what I could do better. Hope to see you again soon. Cheers.
So start by lighting up the hot shop. This is the reheating furnace. And then I'm going to get my measurements on my calipers. We're doing a functional object this time. So I like to start with a design, a drawing. Whether or not I'm doing sculpture or functional, that's what I'm doing. So here's our first trip to the furnace where I'm going to make a gather. This piece of equipment stays on all the time. We don't light this up every day. It stays on 24/7. So when I'm gathering, what I'm thinking about is that line where the glass wraps around the steel rod, which in this case is a blowpipe. It's a hollow tube. I want that line to be as clean and symmetrical as possible. And then when I come out, I want my gather, that blob of glass is called a gather. I want that gather to be even, because I'm not just gathering glass, I'm gathering heat. And the more even I gather, the more evenly heated the object is. And the more evenly heated the object, the more even the bubble is going to blow out. If there's one side that's hotter than the other, that bubble will travel to the hot, soft glass and you'll have an uneven bubble. So what I just did there was called thumbing it. I trapped air in that blowpipe with my thumb. The air can only escape through the soft glass, and so you start a bubble. That tube that I just connected is how we blew glass during the pandemic, where we couldn't have partners blow for us for obvious reasons. We were all wearing masks. And we just sort of kept that. It's a nice way. You'll see here in a second how it functions. So you can see that I'm using that foot pedal. It's a pneumatic foot pedal system, just hooked up to some compressed air. So what I'm doing here now is I'm setting the prep shape for this bubble. I'm setting in the foot. I'm using a pair of tools called pachofis, which are wooden jacks. That's cherry wood or walnut or something that's been soaked in water so they don't catch on fire immediately. And it's a nice soft way of making a form. Of course, there's constant reheating. I only get a few seconds, maybe 30-40 seconds to work on this bubble before it cools down enough where I have to reheat it. So I'm using the jacks to set the neckline. It's the constriction where we're going to remove the vessel from the blowpipe. It's probably arguably the most critical part of blowing a bubble, of blowing glass, making a vessel. You need to have a nice tight constriction, but not totally closed off. You don't want there to be a closed bubble where you can't get air in and out of it. It has to be the right shape so that it's strong enough to survive this entire process, but weak enough that it breaks when you want it to. So those little places where I get up, that's basically me editing out 30 seconds to a minute of reheating that bubble. The thinner the object is, the faster it's going to heat up, but also the faster it's going to cool down. So when you're working thin and delicate, you have that race against time where you're trying to get as much done as you can. So if you really watch, like in some of those moves, how fast my hands are moving between tools, it doesn't look like I'm rushing at all, but I am moving quickly between those tools because I need to be fast to get work done. So I just use a hot torch there. It's an oxy natural gas torch. You could use an oxy propane torch, and I just heated one particular spot so that I can control shaping the glass. I could use the big reheating furnace, but as you can tell by the opening of the big reheating furnace, it's quite large. So it's really difficult to pinpoint heat, and for these tiny, delicate feet that I'm using, I need to control that. So this is the crazy crackle technique. That is just water with baking soda in it. And you have to be really quick in and out. I'm just trying to get up close to that constriction, but not all the way. And I'm dunking it 3 times. In between each time that I dunk it, I am heating it quite a lot. It has to be moving the whole bubble before I dunk it. The key to dunking and getting that crackle is to have your bubble be moving and hot the whole time. And here you'll see we have this lovely satin frosted surface. You notice by the color that it's still, and it's moving a lot, that it's still quite hot. And that's the only way. If I was to just crackle a cold piece of glass, it would just shatter and break into bits. So I want the crackles to be on the very surface, but the inside to be so hot that it maintains its structural integrity. And then I'm going to go back in. That torch is doing 2 things right now. One, it's sort of refreshing the surface of the glass so that it's not as frosted there on the bottom as everywhere else. That's going to help our punty, which is what we're going to do next, is flip this around. That's going to help our punty stick. It doesn't like to stick to that frosted surface, which is both good and bad. But this is also probably the trickiest part of this whole thing in terms of making the nice cup, is to get it to stand up straight. So I am spending a lot of time getting a nice crisp, flat surface with a very slight indentation in the bottom, because a perfectly flat surface doesn't sit flat. You just want it to sit on a ring. So I'm sort of, the bottom of that thing is concave. So I always give my objects a nice long flash or a nice long heat before I do the transfer. I want there to be some red in the glass that's up on the metal rod. In this case, I'm going to be doing my own working solo today, but I would do the same thing if a partner was bringing my piece. So that is the punty. Just a tiny little piece of little gather of glass on a steel rod that's sort of sticky. So the idea behind a good punty is that the bottom of the piece is cold. You notice it was sitting out for quite a long time, and then the punty itself is hot. And most people overthink their punties. I just make a simple dome punty, and then I gave it a little bit of a tip, which is going to just help the separation process, because where I touched it with the metal bench, it cooled it a little bit. I get it quite hot, and then I straighten it. It gives me an opportunity when I'm self-puntying to, you get kind of one shot at that, to make sure that it's on there straight. And when I'm doing that straightening process, I'm taking sort of an aggregate of the foot and the body and try to find a middle ground to where they're both sort of roughly symmetrical, roughly on center. And I'm letting that punty heat up, but trying to keep heat in the top part by using that torch. So I'm letting that punty sort of set up and chill, so it's not moving around too much. So that's a big edit there, big jump. That was probably the longest heat of the entire thing, because I had to take that really cold neck and heat it up. So now I'm drawing out the glass so that I can thin the glass at the top of the cup. That's going to give us that nice sort of lip feel when we take a sip from this this little sipper glass. And we don't want it to be thick there and clunky. We want a nice thin rim. So the best way to do that is just to get rid of a lot of that excess thicker glass. And also allows me to control how big the object is. So you saw I picked up those calipers there and I did a measurement. I know that, I kind of know that when I'm going to put that jack line in that object, I have to put it slightly longer than my calipers. So my calipers are actually giving me a measurement about 1/4 inch smaller than that object is going to be when I finish breaking this off. But I know that that's because when I blow it back out, it will shorten up, and you'll see that process happen in a second. So you watch when I put the calipers on here in a second. You'll see that yeah, it's 1/4 3/8 of an inch longer than where those calipers were. This process here, chilling the neck, I use that as a rest. If I had a partner, then I would just hold the neckline with the diamond shears and they would just tap it. But that's one way you can trim glass without using shears. That move there is really critical if you want to learn how to work faster with thin things. Study that move sitting down. It's the fastest way I know to sit down delicately and gently. So I'm prepping here, checking my sizes, prepping my bench, getting ready. I like to keep a nice, relatively clean bench, relatively organized. So I'm going to chill that a little bit, and then I'm going to use this thing called a soffietta, which just means puffer or air, to give it some more air. You see that shape of that bubble change. I'm getting it closer in the back of it to the size that I need it to be. Another heat, and this is going to be the most aggressive opening. And watch where I'm going to put the tips of the jacks. See, I'm putting them all the way to the back. That's going to keep that opening centered, because if the back is centered and the tips of the jacks are riding on the back of the bubble, then that means that the opening is going to be centered too. So I'm using the back of the bubble as a guide. Now watch this really closely. Watch that shoulder get wider. I'm using the tips of the jacks and pushing on that shoulder to make the bottom of that cup the right profile and the right width. So you'll see me check it here with the calipers. Almost there, not quite. And so we'll do that again. So we're heating this up almost all the way back to the punty. So it's moving on the punty just a little bit. Really using the tips of those jacks. That's why I'm using my not cup jacks, but my rounded tip jacks here. Because they can make that form a little bit easier. They can make that profile shape. So we're getting close. We're getting close to our profile shape. We're getting close to the right size. See me checking the size. Right there, you could hear where it kind of grabbed the calipers, and that told me that's the right size now, right width. And so then I get out my prototype. I often work with prototypes too. If I'm making a series of cups, say a commission of a series of a set, 4, 8, 12 cups, whatever, 6 cups, whatever. I'll make one that's the standard. That'll keep me honest, so I don't continuously make changes. And I use that as the object that I'm testing it against. Calipers are great, but also just having something that looks like it. So you see me adjust that from the base up to the rim to try to get the right right curve, that continuous curve going down from the rim to the base, and it looks like we got it. Right size too, within a 1/16 or an 1/8. So here we go, a couple of light taps. It should just come right off. There we go. I'm breaking that off onto a piece of vermiculite board, which doesn't suck any heat out of it. It's not really very conductive, so the rims don't crack. And then I'm using a oxy-gas torch to just smooth out the punty mark, so I don't have to worry about any cold working. I got a simple pair of grilling tongs here with some Kevlar mitts on them, and into the annealing oven. It's going to sit in that annealing oven for over about 8 hours and slowly cool down from 1,000 degrees ish. Actually, it's 960 degrees Fahrenheit to room temperature. And here we go. Here are the final 3 of the final 4 in the set. And you can see there's a frosty outside, but the insides of them are perfectly smooth and perfectly shiny, because that soda water, baking soda water, does not affect the interior of that bubble. It stays nice and shiny, but you just get this extra frosty exterior. There we have it. Like and subscribe.